Our town, our TV. Amherst City Cable.
There's a shelter pet who wants to meet you. Meet one today. Visit theshelterpetproject.org. Adopt.
Good evening, I'm Jennifer of Wasilk, and welcome to the Community Voice. Tonight, my special guest is Mark Costilow, who is the Safety Services Director for the City of Amherst. Welcome, and thank you for coming back to the show, Mark.
Thanks for having me.
The Safety Services Director, that's a political appointment made by the mayor. What does a Safety Services Director do?
Safety Service Director actually used to be two jobs. There's a Safety Director and a Service Director. The Safety Director would typically be in charge of your safety forces, the police department, fire department, probably building department. So I would be the direct supervisor for those three departments with the police chief, fire chief, and the building inspector reporting to me. Services Director would be more like the electric department, sewer department, water department, arborists, the radio or the TV channel. Any of those departments would also report to me, and I'm in charge of their direct supervisor and their budgets.
So you wear two hats for the City of Amherst.
They combined it to one job like some other cities do, and every department in the city would be reporting to me. And then the mayor, of course, with final say, I report to the mayor.
Yeah, you report to Mayor Taylor. Now, you have a fairly large budget then. If you have, basically, you're responsible for almost all of the expenditures.
I'm in charge of every expense the city has. I sign payroll, look through it, make sure overtimes are correct. I rely a lot on the supervisors. They look at it first and sign off on it. There's actually, most people don't believe this, there's a $34 million budget here in Amherst. That includes $34 million. I sign every requisition unless it's an emergency. If I'm unavailable, the mayor is able to sign requisitions for things. I can sign and spend up to $50,000 without city council approval. We don't do that very often, but once in a while we do, some police cruisers. We just spent $150,000 for a new street truck, a salting dump truck, and that went through city council. They approve it. We have state bidding, so I'm able to find the lowest bidder, and we purchased that vehicle. And we just did a big upgrade here at the TV station, about $20,000 worth of new equipment.
Now, you've been involved you're involved in new equipment purchases, it sounds like.
Everything.
So tell
I really enjoy that. I'm like it's the greatest job in the world for me. It's like a little boy in a new toy room or at the toy store. We just reviewed a new not a street paving, a pothole, a Durapatch machine, which is kind of a new way of patching potholes.
Are these cold patches?
No, this is a hot patch. This is a tank that keeps a hot Atari type, for lack of better words, Atari liquid that is mixed in this machine with little gravels, and they go to the site, they put some of the adhesion material down in the pothole after they clean it out. Then the machine starts mixing gravel, and they put a bit of gravel on top. Almost a chip and tar, but a lot better product. We just did that. The manufacturer brought one to town 2 weeks ago. The utility supervisor, street supervisor, and most of the street guys that were actually going to be using the machine, we spent about a half a day reviewing it. Now we're in the process of deciding who likes it, who don't, and the decision will probably come down to me and Mayor Taylor whether we bring that new piece of equipment to town.
So is that something that can be used year-round, that patching?
That's definitely something to be used year-round. It's more the cold patch material tends to get pulled out a lot.
Right.
I mean, this adheres to the road. From what I'm hearing from other cities, it doesn't get pulled out by the snow plows. On a water main break where we have to patch the road, if the material sags a little bit, typically you'd have to dig all that material out and put new cold patch. This product, you can come back and just level out the little bit that has
So you can just add some more on top
We can
of
just
it.
add a little bit more on top of it. Really neat product.
Well, how much does a machine like that cost?
This one's just under $60,000, so it would be a machine purchase that would have to go through City Council to approve the purchase. There's also a storage tank for the material that would get delivered, and I believe that's right around $20,000. But I think it'll be coming to Amherst. It really looks like a good product.
Yeah, so, because in the past, we really couldn't do patching during the real cold parts of the year.
We do, but just about the first time a snowplow comes through, it ends up in little chunks all over the place. It gets pulled out real fast.
Speaking of snow and snowstorms, what's your involvement when we have like a storm or an outage? Are you involved in that, or is that pretty much the crews are?
I get involved once in a while. I mean, quite often. Most of the time, I've got a lot of faith. We've got safety crews, service crews, utility workers, I think, are some of the best in the area, if not in the state or the country. I got a lot of faith in those guys. They typically, there's a list of them that's on call. If the police department gets an outage call, they'll contact who's on call and they'll go out. But there are special circumstances. If a lot of people might remember the coldest day of last winter, it was 15 or 20.
Right, you didn't come to City Council.
It was 15 or 20 below zero, and the utility supervisor of the electric department called and said he was going out on his own. He had another crew out there, but he was going to drive it. It was so important. A couple of the apartment buildings was dropping very fast in temperature, so we were really...
There was no outage. There was no power.
There was no power, so a lot of homes were in fear of freezing. It was that cold, so I went out with them and was looking for the outage. We actually had a call from a resident. The residents are big help in these situations. Said she saw a flash. She didn't know what it was. It was in the middle of winter, so it wasn't lightning. So me and Mr. Zabel went out into that area, and there's different little fuses all over the city. So whenever there's an outage, we know it's fuse to fuse to fuse, and I'm learning where all those fuses are. So we were kind of in the middle of the area where this outage was. They flipped. We couldn't find no tree limbs, couldn't find no down wires, so we asked them to flip basically put a fuse in it, flips the electric back on. As soon as they did that, we saw a big blue flash on North Main on the other side, on north side of Cooper Foster Road. So we immediately went there,
right.
and it was very dark. We took our flashlights around. We saw where actually one of the Ohio Edison lines and one of our lines where the two utilities cross. Because it was so cold, the cable line, a TV cable went across. It was so cold the cable TV guide wire shrunk, pulled the two telephone poles closer together, and the Ohio Edison line sagged enough to touch our line, and that was causing the outage. So once we saw that, we were able to bring one of the crews in. They got up in the lift truck, and they put some plastic sleeves over it so that even if it did touch, it wouldn't short out, put the fuse back in, and everybody had electricity.
So you actually accompanied the supervisor that night so that he wouldn't be alone on that.
I thought it was dangerous that night to be, typically in just a rainstorm. When I say just a rainstorm, it's still dangerous, but 20 below zero, a fall in the ditch or anything, and I'm not saying, that he's not able to do those things. I'm sure he would have, but I just thought it was a safety issue, and I went along with him, and it was a nice learning experience for me.
Yeah. Well, what other kinds of things do you do with the crews? There are other times when you go out with the crews. That was the electrical
There's
crew.
flooding issues, some small, it's not as bad as it was. We did the big Mill Street sewer project.
Yeah.
There was like $2.5 million on the south side of town, and that's helped a lot.
Yes.
Typically, if we get phone calls, I'll go out and see some of these basements. I'll look at flooded streets. There's one on Terra Lane. I know every time it rains, it floods a little bit. So I've been checking that one out every time. And I just like to be a help. I mean, I'm a farm boy at heart, and I love the machinery. I like building things. And, what better way I enjoy those things.
Well, you've given us a really good idea of what you've done. What kind of things are you looking forward to the utilities and the safety departments doing the next couple of
the electric?
The next year?
We've got a big upgrade coming with electric lines. There's something that it's a generic name, Hendrix line. It's a type of electric line that's rubber coated, and they run very close together. And the Hendrix line that we have over by Route 58 near the Sharondale and that big loop supplies a lot of the electricity for our commercial areas along there. That line's gotten old enough where that rubber coating is deteriorating, and we're in the process of replacing that. So I'm working with an engineer that we hired, because our typical engineers doesn't do electric, so we had to find a new engineer for the electric process. And they're in the line of working on that now, and that's $1,800,000 project, and that has already been through City Council. City Council has approved it, and we're in the process of getting that final engineering done, and shouldn't take a whole lot of time with construction once they're ready to go. I'm really looking forward to watching that process. Some people are going to get their electric lines put underground. They're not going to have as many telephone poles in their backyard. They've done a very good job. Instead of all Hendrix, in order to save some money, we've got some conventional, some underground, and some Hendrix to replace that. So I really enjoy those things.
Well, Mark, I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking about what the Safety Services Director does for the City of Amherst. That's really interesting, and I know a lot of people don't understand what goes on behind the scenes, and you've certainly given us a much better idea. Thank you very much. This is Jennifer Wasilk. You've been watching The Community Voice with my special guest tonight, Mr. Mark Costilow, who is the Safety Services Director for the City of Amherst. Thank you, and good night.
Serving Amherst and Amherst Township, your hometown television station, Amherst City Cable.